Ahsoka episode 3 is pretty disappointing. Not that it was that bad, but just not a whole lot happened. And this show is really starting to feel smaller and smaller in scale as the episodes go on. And now that we're approaching the halfway mark, I'm starting to feel more confident in the fact that this show won't end up being anything special, and will largely be forgotten by most people when it's all said and done. So is there anything good to be found in episode 3 of Ahsoka? Well, yes there is, but once again, just like the premiere, there's a lot of dumb shit that I just can't overlook. So episode 3 is the shortest of the 3 episodes so far, with a runtime of about 37 minutes if I'm correct. But if you take away the credits, it's only really about half an hour of actual content, which is just pathetic in my opinion. But one thing that the short runtime actually helps with is an issue that I had with the first 2 episodes, and that is that this episode I think is the best paced out of the 3. It's a really short runtime, so it feels like the story is moving along a lot better than it did in episodes 1 and 2. But even though it's the best paced out of the 3, I still feel like they could have shaved off a couple minutes if they wanted, but really that's only a minor gripe. Now before I talk about the actual story of this episode, I want to quickly mention something that I forgot to say in my last episode, and that's that this show is kind of mismarketed. And what I mean by that is that it's not really the Ahsoka show. It feels much more like a sort of Rebels season 5. And if you haven't seen Rebels, I can see how you might struggle with understanding the context behind what's even going on, and who the hell these people even are. Who's this green chick? Who's this chick that looks like she came out of a children's coloring book? Hell, you might not even know who Thrawn is. This show just assumes that you've watched Rebels. And you kinda have to, in my opinion, if you're looking to get any sort of emotional takeaway from this show. Because up to this point, if you haven't seen Rebels, the first 3 episodes probably haven't given you much of a reason to really care about Hera, or Sabine, or Ezra. I think that the show would have came off a lot more genuine in its marketing if it was simply titled Ahsoka, a Star Wars Rebels story. Because if you were someone that was hoping for a very tightly focused story about Ahsoka, well that's not really what we've gotten so far. But anyways, looking at the actual story itself, there's not a whole lot that happens in this episode, and I can divide it into about 3 sections. The first section is an opening Jedi training sequence with Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang. Now this opening scene was fine to me. It's pretty generic, but it doesn't really do anything wrong. I think Ahsoka gives wise words of wisdom, and it really just shows how much she's matured up to this point in her life. It's also nice to see Sabine actually struggle at something, because across all of Star Wars Rebels and the first couple episodes of this show, it's not something that we get very often. But I think the thing that I just really can't overlook is the fact that they've made Sabine a Jedi now. And yes, they make it very clear that her midichlorian count and aptitude for the Force is extremely low, but if that's the case, then why is Ahsoka trying to train her as a Jedi at all? She says a line something along the lines of, talent is a factor, but it's also a great deal of training and discipline, which is true, but if her aptitude for the Force is so low that the Jedi Academy would never even consider her, then it doesn't matter how much training she does, she should never be able to realistically wield the Force. But why do I get the feeling that this show is just going to insult the audience's intelligence and do it anyway? I would bet a lot of money that by the end of this show, Sabine will have full telekinetic abilities. Just you wait. So the next scene that we get is with Hera trying to convince the Republic Senate to send resources to investigate the Denab system, for the possibility that Thrawn might return. It's a quick scene, but firmly establishes the fact that the 3 ladies are going to be on their own without any support for probably the majority of the remainder of the season. Now I know that to us, the audience, it may seem pretty dumb why the New Republic wouldn't send resources to try and snub this out, but I mean, if I was in the Star Wars galaxy, with no knowledge of what's seemingly going to happen in the next couple of episodes, I'd probably side with the Senator as well. If I was a Senator, and you told me that an Imperial Grand Admiral, who supposedly died years ago, didn't actually die, he was actually sucked into interstellar space by space whales and transported to another galaxy, and is now for some reason about to return, unite the scattered remnants of the Empire, and overthrow the New Republic, yeah, I think you're crazy. And even though I'd be proven wrong, I don't think that the Senator is that out of line for wanting to use the New Republic resources towards other things. So the third section of this episode actually takes up the majority of the runtime, and that's everything that happens at the Denab system. When Ahsoka and Sabine come out of hyperspace, they immediately get into a dogfight, which I thought was pretty good. I was entertained by it, so I have no complaints there. I also thought that the massive hyperspace ring was pretty fucking cool. We've seen hyperspace rings before, but they've always been little and have have only had the capacity to travel within the galaxy. But this is a giant one with the ability to travel to entirely different galaxies outside the Star Wars galaxy. I know we've never seen anything like this on screen, and I'm not sure if something like this exists in Star Wars lore. So if the writers came up with this on their own, I think it's a really cool idea that they came up with. Let me know in the comments if there is something like this that does exist in the Star Wars lore, because to my knowledge, this is the first of its kind. But where this scene starts to get really dumb for me is the Space Ahsoka section. So the ship gets heavily damaged and they're sitting dead in space. So in an attempt to defend the ship, Ahsoka goes outside, and instead of these idiots shooting at the completely exposed parts of the ship, they shoot directly at the person with lightsabers who can block the blaster fire back at them. This is so dumb. Why would you shoot at the most heavily guarded section of the ship instead of shooting at the parts that are completely exposed? She can't guard everything at once. The ship is huge compared to her. It's stuff like this where I really want to like this show, but then they write scenes like this that just completely take me out of the experience. But anyways, they get the ship working again and are chased down to the surface of the planet. And it's here where we get our first glimpse of the space whales. And if you haven't seen Rebels and don't know what these things are, they're basically these giant floating whales that can travel through hyperspace. I don't know, I kind of have mixed feelings about the space whales. Part of me thinks that it's kind of dumb that creatures can live and survive in space. But then again, this is Star Wars. It's a space fantasy in a galaxy far, far away. And I have seen weirder things come out of this universe, so I guess they don't bother me too much. And we'll just have to wait and see if they're implemented into the story any good or not. Ahsoka and Sabine hide in the forest to avoid detection from Shin and Marok, and the episode ends. Overall, I thought episode 3 was alright, but just like the other two episodes, there's certainly some things that are holding it back. It's way too short for my liking. And like I've said before, there's some stuff to like here, but it's just spoiled by some stupid shit. I don't want to say this episode was a filler episode because there are some important things to the plot that happen, but in the grand scheme of things, episode 3 is not going to be one of the episodes that's very memorable. Well, that's gonna do it for this week's Ahsoka video, guys. If you made it this far and you enjoyed this video, do me a favor by leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. If you want to be notified about when I post my video for Ahsoka episode 4, hit the notification bell. But anyways, that's all I got for today. I'll see you guys next time.